Hey guys, check out Italian Wine Unplugged 2.0, brought to you by Mama Jumbo Shrimp, a fully updated second edition, reviewed and revised by an expert panel of certified Italian wine ambassadors from across the globe. The book also includes an edition by Professore Attilio Scienza, Italy's leading vine geneticist. To pick up a copy today, just head to Amazon.com or visit us at mamajumboshrimp.com.
Welcome to The Next Generation. I'm Victoria Cece. Join me as we chat with young Italian wine people shaking up the wine scene. We're going to geek out on a grape or grape fam, then hear about all the wild wine things our guests have been up to, from vineyard experiments to their favorite wine bars.
Welcome back to another episode of The Next Generation on the Italian Wine Podcast. Hope you are feeling so well today. I am feeling pretty groovy today. I'm very caffeinated. Do not have a drop of wine in my system yet. Hope you do, though. Or you plan to. Either way, we have some fun things today to pair with your coffee, wine, cleanse, I don't know, from wine. Hopefully not. Today we have a lovely guest. James Marshall from Tenuta Licinia, a wonderful winery in Lucignano in Tuscany. We are going to chat with him about all the fine things that he is up to, as well as all things happening in his special little nook of Tuscany. Little spoiler alert, he isn't Tuscan, as you can guess from his name, but I will not tell you his story yet. You can either skip my blabbing about grape varietals to find out faster in a couple minutes, or you can stay here and learn a little bit more about a fun little Tuscan grape. James does not grow this grape. I just feel like, we have to talk a little bit more about grapes other than Sangiovese and Tuscany. And not to say that we don't, but we have to give a little bit more love to the must-know grapes of Tuscany, besides Sangiovese. And we're taking this again from the Italian Wine Unplugged 2.0 book that you can also have in your hands like I do. Available now. Let's go into it. Okay, so what grape do you think we're going to talk about today? I'll give you a minute to guess. Got an idea? I'm telling you, it's Mammolo. So Mammolo is a grape typically found in Tuscany and is used as a frequent blending partner with, drumroll, Sangiovese, especially in the Vino Nobile di Montepulciano blend. You heard of that wine before? If you haven't, do a quick Google search. It's pretty famous. The name Mammolo comes from the word mammola, which refers to the color violet and the flower of the same name. This grape is considered to be the parent of Pollera Nera, and it might be a relative of Ciliegiolo and Sangiovese grape varietals. You'll see that often, a lot of grapes grown, originating in the same area usually have some close relationships, Ciliegiolo and Sangiovese being other grapes found in Tuscany. And going into the vineyard now with Mammolo, back to what I was saying before, Mammolo is an ancient grape variety. It has many biotypes, which are generally not separated in the vineyards. And as indicated by the name, Mammolo wines are defined by their violet aroma. So now we're moving into the glass. So if you were to have Mammolo in the glass by itself, which is usually not, you'd find it blended, but if you were, it has violet aromas with flavors of black cherry and raspberry on the palate. It actually has unstable anthocyanins and produces light-colored wines that tend to oxidize easily, which is why it is typically used in blends and only in small quantities, as I said before. Anthocyanins are what produce those colors, the richer colors in wine. And finally, it produces still and dry red wines, which you probably got from before. So now, time to bring on our lovely guest, James Marshall, straight from Tenuta Licinia in Lucignano, in the Province of Arezzo, in Tuscany. Now you can find him.
And here he is. Ciao, James. Welcome back.
Hi, Victoria. Nice to speak.
Yeah. So I can say this, that me and James talked before, and then we had a technical difficulty, and now we're back, which I'm happy about, because life has changed a lot since, what was it, December or January when we last chatted?
Yeah, I think it was probably my fault, the technological error. But yeah, it's nice to have a second go at this.
I mean, no, it's my fault, but we don't need to go into that. And, I expect, we're the next generation. We're supposed to be the ones that really know how to deal with technology, but I often find it's quite the opposite sometimes.
Yeah, me too.
So how was your Easter?
Easter was really nice. So I went back and saw my family in Belgium, and yeah, it was a lot of cousins, and then occasionally relations who you've never met before, and yeah, all the different generations, and we have a lot of new members, some new babies in the family, so it's very nice, and obviously lots of chocolate because it's Belgium.
So as everyone can hear, James is not Italian; he's Belgian, but a Belgian Tuscan now, or by adoption of. I don't know how to even say that. Gosh, trying to put words together. You now live in Tuscany and have a winery. That is what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it was so my granddad started the winery about 20 years ago. I mean, and he'd been living in Tuscany for a long time before that even, and there was this little there was a very small plot of vines which, I mean, it was badly planted with not great plant material, but he always said that it had been a famous vineyard a long time ago, long before him. And when he retired, he decided he would replant the vineyard. And when he got a bit older and couldn't really manage things anymore, I took over about 3.5 years ago. And I was not being trained, or I didn't sort of go to enological school or anything. I was doing my doctorate in the UK, and yeah. But when the opportunity came up, I sort of started spending more time there, and I just got sucked in and moved there, speaking zero Italian and I didn't know anyone. But in Tuscany, very quickly you become part of the local community, and it's been really nice. It's been very nice.
I'm curious to know, like, when you first moved there, like, what was that like for you culturally? Do you have any like funny moments of you trying to settle into this small little town as the Belgian?
Yeah, well, yes, because it was quite a strange arrival, because about a month after I arrived, I had a few people in the village asking me about kangaroos, and what had happened is that another Belgian, I think there are probably two Belgians in a huge area, but the other Belgian, who I actually don't know, in the area had these kangaroos, and they'd escaped during COVID, and they were living in the woods around the village. But of course, as soon as I arrived, everybody thought I was the Belgian who'd released the kangaroos. And so these kangaroos were living around our vineyard for about 3 or 4 years. One of them has recently passed away, sadly, but I think another one is still running around the woods. And it was a huge thing for the village because it was in all the national newspapers, and I was wrongly identified as the person who had let the kangaroos loose.
I can imagine that conversation, because you, like, at that point, probably Italian was not very good, and they're asking if you have a kangaroo, and you're like, am I understanding this correctly? Are you asking me if I have a kangaroo?
It was exactly like that.
It's like, no, I can understand your question. I think I'm tripping out. Oh my gosh. Have you ever seen these kangaroos?
I've seen them. I've seen one kangaroo once, and I was just in the vineyard, and below the vineyard, you just heard sort of a lot of leaves being moved around in the forest next to the vineyard, and suddenly it's a little kangaroo. They're not the biggest kangaroos. I was expecting something really big. They're quite small kangaroos, but they're still I guess, yeah. And it just hopped out the woods. It had a look around. I don't think it was scared of us, because it sort of looked at us, and then it retreated back into the woods. But we were just impressed at how easily they were surviving in a completely new environment.
Kangaroos in Tuscany. I would have never even thought at all. I don't even know what I would do if I saw a kangaroo in Italy in general. Why? Did you ever find out why they brought kangaroos there? And they're Belgian, so
Yeah,
do you know the story?
I'm trying to piece it together, but I don't actually know the people who had them. I think they sort of had some llamas and some kangaroos in a field, because I don't know why. I'm not sure what their motivation was.
It just like, I'm gonna move to Tuscany and then I'm gonna have kangaroos and llamas. It's just, everyone has their own dream, James, I guess. And sometimes you have to take the the blame for somebody's very, very bold dream. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. I mean, and so just for the listeners to understand, you are in Lucignano, correct?
Yeah, Lucignano is a very small and a very traditional. It's a hilltop village, and the streets go in in circles that get smaller and smaller. It's a very beautiful village, but it's not the most touristy one, and it's it's in the center of Italy pretty much. It's not near the coast, it's in central Tuscany, and it's quite a sort of hilly, mountainous area with a lot of forest.
And what makes Lucignano special to you? Like, what do you love about it?
Well, I think it's apart from certain specific architectural features, it has this one staircase which looks very modern, but it's from the Renaissance, and it's the staircase going up to the sort of. It's one of those villages that has a ridiculously huge cathedral for the population, but it has this very interesting staircase that leads up to the cathedral, and I think it's a really interesting feature because it looks kind of like a sort of mid-century piece of design, but actually it's really old. But apart from that, I think what's nice in the village is, it's managed to stay. It's very beautiful, but it's not very touristy. It doesn't get too crowded, and there's still a very community life, and that's really nice. It's quite an old. The average age is probably over 60 in the village, but everybody knows each other, and everyone's very, very welcoming, and there's a lot of village gossip and
the gossip.
Yeah, it's a very nice place to live, and I came from the city and from towns, and it's a strange thing being in a place where everybody knows you, and the rhythm of life is determined by the village and not by the news or anything. So it's a big change, but it's a very nice place. I highly recommend Lucignano, and we have a great mayor at the moment who is doing lots of things to make the village, a more attractive place for people to come visit. So yeah, please come to Lucignano.
You're like, bring the youth, come on, the next generation, come hang out. Oh my gosh, I'm sure that sounds. So I just want to say, like, I hear the birds and whatnot in the background, and I'm actively jealous of that piece in nature, because all I have is the construction of an Italy happening. Well, the deconstruction of an Italy happening behind me. It's such a contrast. And I'm like, maybe I should go to Lucignano like tomorrow. But on that note, I think, I don't know, this has me thinking a little bit about, Tuscany and how it is really different where you go in the region. And since the region is so famous, it's, one of the top most famous wine regions in Italy, if massing it all together, of course. But given that you're not from there, of course you have that love for it from your grandfather. But what makes that part of Tuscany different than let's say, I don't know, Siena or another area in your perspective?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that to start off with, what makes it not different is it this kind of little communal life that you have in Lucignano, where the community is very close knit. I think it's something that you find a lot in Tuscany, and it's a really nice part of Tuscany. I think it's one of the things that explains also, why the wine culture is so good in Tuscany. But I think what makes our area special, if we move onto the winemaking side, I mean, one thing that's interesting about the area is historically, and we look, really a long time back, it was just as famous an area as other areas that are more famous in Tuscany. So like the Chianti Classico or Montalcino or something. It was a long time ago very famous, but in the 20th century in Italy, you had a lot of social upheaval and a lot of changes. And, actually in the whole of Tuscany, the wine culture changed into a more of a mass production culture. And when producers started seeking and trying to make more higher end wines, I think Lucignano didn't and the area around it, they didn't really sort of start rebuilding that heritage. I mean, and it's one of the things that I think we're trying to do. The thing that's interesting about Lucignano, though, I think which is also interesting about Lucignano from a winemaking side, is that it's geologically not at all a harmonious area. The types of soils change every 30 meters, and most of those soils are, either okay or not fantastic for wine. But you have these very small, tiny patches which are super interesting and can make really beautiful wines. And those soils are different from the other. They have some similar types of soils to, Panzano and Montalcino, but, also with a slight difference. And I think that's kind of the exciting thing in a way. It's more Burgundian in the sense that you have these tiny little patches of really beautiful soils where the potential is, I think, nearly unlimited. And most of the area is not superb necessarily for making wine. So it's a lot about identifying where to plant and which vineyards in particular to bring back, and yeah, it's very interesting.
Are you enjoying this podcast? Don't forget to visit our YouTube channel, Mama Jumbo Scenery. Now back to the show.
No, it really is, because if you're discovering something that's new in a region that often seems, already, super present in the market and the palates of people all over the world, it's almost extra special because it's almost because it's in that like shadow, but in a good way, if that makes sense. The fact that wine culture and food culture as well in Italy as a whole, it's what we know it as right now is very much, I can't say it's a recent innovation in the sense that what Italy was like 100 years ago was completely different. And you bringing up the fact that how Tuscany moved into mass production, and obviously it's moved away from that to an extent for the most part. And I think given that your grandfather went to Tuscany, what was his ambition to create like really stylistic wines, or did he just love making wine and wanted to be in Tuscany?
I mean, he was quite an academic person, and he really loved especially Cabernet Sauvignon, mainly because that was, what he was brought up on when he was young in Belgium. That's what everybody had. And he, I think for him, the thing that he loved the Burgundian culture. He had some Burgundian cousins who he would visit, and he loved these tiny little production, these little micro cuvées, and having the real vigneron style within the winemaking approach, etc. And I think because of those Burgundian cousins, he became very interested in soil quality and especially subsoils. And today in the wine world, you sort of have, I think the majority view is that, at least when you speak to the more academic side of the wine world, that subsoils maybe aren't as important as a lot of winemakers make them out to be. I think that subsoils are really central and the most important thing in many ways. And so I think his view is that he knew that there were these very beautiful subsoils around Lucignano, and the idea was to try and discover them. And so there's a lot of research into identifying, these very small parcels which could be interesting. And I think that sort of became nearly intellectual for him. And he only planted a very small or 4-hectare vineyard, but he was looking for other things, I think. And when I took over, I continued that search. And I think that was sort of one of the motivating factors to make these really small production cabs rather than the big estate cab, but these tiny selected parcels on the soils. But yeah, so I think that's sort of, if from the wine side, I think that was really what had motivated him. But there was another side which was just, there's something very romantic about Tuscany and beautiful about Tuscany, and it partially in the preservation of the villages and the towns and all the stories and the history that comes with it. So I think there was sort of those two things together made it irresistible to him.
I can imagine. I mean, I always think about what it would be like without cell phones or anything to visit a place like that and have like a really just raw kind of experience, because now we're so overwhelmed with visual content and whatnot that we almost like have these expectations and ideas of places. But back in I'm assuming your grandfather came to Tuscany in maybe the 40s or 50s?
In the 60s.
The 60s? Oh my God, the 60s in Italy. Wow. Oh my gosh, what a time to be alive. I could only imagine the thrill, And even speaking of thrill, it's quite rebellious in a way. I mean, maybe not rebellious because your grandfather is an Italian, but still to come to Italy and plant vineyards with Cab Sauv. It's bold.
The truth is that, well, I think when he did, he decided to plant, I think, at the end of the 90s and the 2000s.
Ah, okay. So it was like a later thing.
Yeah, it was a later thing. I mean, because there was a vineyard and it was a mixture of plant material and I mean, it was not very well planted and it needed to be replanted. And so for a while, he sort of, with a local farmer for that vineyard would just give the grapes to a local farmer who would make a wine. But I think that as time went on, he saw in that parcel that there was a lot of potential, and he really decided to replant the Cabernet Sauvignon in the late 90s, 2000s. And then with all the permits, etc., I think he finally started planting in 2005 only. So it's sort of, he wasn't necessarily, I wouldn't describe him as a pioneer of Cabernet in Tuscany, definitely not. He was following a trend in a certain way. I think, except maybe what distinguished him is he planted with the intention never to expand the labels into larger productions. And I think that's maybe something that distinguished his view, or the view of the winery still today. It's Cab Sauvignon was often planted to rival the big brands of Bordeaux and show that Tuscany could do, just as interesting cabs as Bordeaux maybe. But yeah, in Bordeaux, they make 100,000 or 200,000 bottles of the big brands. And I think with us, it's 3,000 or 4,000 bottles usually. It depends.
I mean, it is quite romantic, though, going back to what you were saying, because he had this plot that he was like his neighbor, like his well, maybe not his neighbor, like his child, in a way, watching it, seeing how it can grow up, and then he decided to finally turn it into a vineyard. So he kind of got to know it in a way over many, many years. I'm just imagining your grandfather having this plot of land and always looking at it, analyzing it, and then one day it's it's going to become.
Yeah, I mean, I think that actually for sure some of the motivation comes from just him, having seen it there, and you're unable not to imagine, or dream a little about how it might turn out, etc. Yeah.
But did you spend a lot of time coming to Tuscany with your grandfather before you moved?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me when I wasn't living in Italy, so it was really where we would be sent for our summers when we were young. So we would spend 2 months there every summer. And so a lot of that was, learning about wine and thinking about it and being taught by him, and also the other people who were working with him. And then when I left school, I did a few months in working in some other wineries, and that's when I discovered how backbreaking winemaking, or the viticultural part of winemaking, is, which I also think is something that's not talked about enough. But anyway, it's...
Oh, I agree. Not to cut you off. It's one of the things I think people, when it comes to romanticizing wine, you're like, it's agricultural labor.
It's medieval labor.
Like, it's literally, and then not to mention like it's medieval labor in the vines, especially if you want to make wines, you want to treat your vines with as less intervention as possible,
Yeah.
But, and even if you go in the winery, it's like that manual labor, you could lose a hand. I almost saw someone lose a hand in a winery. It's no joke.
Yeah, I think it's true that in the winery you can have very long days, especially during the vinifications, but I think it's in the vineyard where I think I was just, before really doing those days of work, I didn't understand. I couldn't have imagined what it was like to work in a vineyard. I mean, doing 9 hours of pruning, and your back is sort of bent over for the whole 9 hours. And I mean, there's something good about it for the soul in a certain way. And you always have this incredible sense of achievement when the day's over. But I was shocked, and I just had a lot of admiration, because you saw there were so many people who had been doing this for 40 years and just working every day in the vineyard, or doing these agricultural tasks for their entire lives. And I was very impressed. And 2 months for me when I was 18 and still a bit of a tween felt like a very, very long time, and I was pretty proud of getting through it. But and then I was planning on becoming an academic, and then in the later phases of my doctorate, I sort of was presented with this opportunity, and as I said, I just left.
You're like, I'm going to become a medieval laborer.
Well, I think on the other hand, there's some really good, amazing and fun things about making wine. I think it's one of the few forms of agriculture where you produce, maybe, let's say, a more sophisticated product. And there's this other side, which is, I think winemaking is quite intellectual and very difficult in certain ways. So you do have to do a lot of reading and studying and think carefully about things. So you have lots of different dimensions. The manual labor is the central part, but there are really nice and less backbreaking parts to winemaking too.
Well, I think being a winemaker really, of course, it depends on your approach, but it exercises like every aspect of your body, your personality, your skill set, because it's like, especially as a small producer, you're taking care of the vine, so you got your medieval labor. Then you have to make the wine, so you have to have a balance of understanding science, a bit of chemistry. Then you have to sell the wine, so you have to be a salesperson. And then you also have to, like, obviously manage the business side. And I think for me, that's what I always found beautiful about being on the winemaking side, is it's like it's really like challenges those multitasking skills.
Yeah, you use every part of your brain. I mean, and that is very nice. The variety is a really nice part of the job. I mean, I know that I'm not so good in everything that's branding, etc. But that's the other nice thing, is that with these very small businesses, that are family owned, I just have lots of cousins who I can call up and ask for help and advice. That's a really other nice part of the job, is just that the company is sort of, I mean, in many ways it's very serious about the winemaking, etc. But when it comes to the commercial side, I mean, there's just not the resources to have a whole commercial team. So it becomes like this very familial and this very family orientated, program where we come up with ideas together and work together.
That's the very Italian side of it, right? It's like you get the whole families in it, and it's well, I always say this, and it's probably everyone on the podcast is like, we get it, or Victoria. The Italian wine is about like community. It's about like it's not about the commodity. It's about the community, and like if you miss that aspect, the wines lose a little bit of that soul. Kind of like what you're saying earlier, like you need that soul in the wine. And I know it sounds so it's philosophical, but it's when you don't have that, then I don't know. It's like, don't make the wine. Like, make sure it has that basis.
Yeah, I mean, I think the soul also, just if we speak metaphorically about the soul in the wine, the soul, you might just say this identitarian side to the wine, and in some ways that's what makes the wine really special. But I think that I would also say it's the soil and the land that and that gives it those identities. And I think in a way the communal aspect comes from, or this maybe more sociological aspect comes from the way you interpret the soil and how you try and translate the soil into the wine. So I think that's sort of the communal identity of wines comes from, kind of the way that people interpret or translate wines. And then I mean that's also, of course, the winemaking and the style of the wine. That's also, I mean, it always, probably a lot of the time, is communicating with a historical community and a culture. But at the same time, if I can say, the thing that I find more difficult with Italian wine is I think that because in the 20th, I mean, we talked about this earlier, but in the 20th century, you had this, upheaval where this small community-based viticulture kind of got replaced by a more industrialized form of, if not industrialized, with a view of producing quantity over quality. And I think in certain ways, maybe not the new generation, it was the last couple of generations started the work of really, improving everything from the viticulture to the winemaking. But I still think that a lot of the traditions, or things that now seem like traditions, can still be questioned, and especially I think in the understanding of land and what, how we should think about different types of vineyards. And I think that understanding still needs to mature. And I sort of look at France and especially Burgundy, and I think that the Tuscany has the most beautiful soils, as beautiful as Burgundy. But I don't think that we're yet at the same level as the Burgundians in a certain way. We still kind of have some work to do and things to change.
There is a big, narrative, especially on the market, like for consumers that aren't, that don't really know the complexity of Italian wines, and then the comparison to something like France, it becomes, it's an interest. And I'm very curious, even though I can't go into it yet, so let's leave it as a cliffhanger for the audience.
Yeah.
But I am interested in knowing why you think that Tuscany, particularly Tuscany, is not there yet, and what that means. But we do have to kind of wrap it up here, unfortunately. But I did want to ask you one question before we close out, a very, very important one. You had said last time that even though living in Tuscany for a few years now, your Italian is very mediocre. Is it still? And can you respond in Italian?
I would say that it's still extremely mediocre. It's very bad Italian, but at least I'm able now to sort of communicate successfully. I usually get my intended meaning across now, but no, it's okay, and yeah, I can say ciao.
You can say ciao. I don't have any kangaroos in my backyard, but if you want some wine, you can come over.
Okay, I'll give it a go. Ciao, Non ho canguro in mi campo e vieni a provare il vino quando vuole.
Perfetto. Woo!
I'm sure there were several mistakes in this.
As a fellow non-Italian, American thinks you did swell. Well, thank you so much, James, for coming back on the pod.
No, thank you for having me, and I'm already regretting trying to speak Italian.
It was great. It was great. Well, I can't wait to one day visit Lucignano and maybe see a kangaroo. And wishing you best of luck with the growing season here and all your medieval labor. All right. Ciao, James.
Bye, Victoria. Bye.
As always, a big grazie for hanging out with me today. Remember, you can catch me every Sunday on the Italian Wine Podcast, available anywhere you can get your pods.